Catchy, noodly legato riffs, beautiful guitar tunings, and powerful chord progressions. It's safe to say that Dylan Mattheisen's guitar playing style has captivated and fascinated many of us. So in today's video, I'll be breaking down 7 iconic tiny moving parts riffs so you can start playing and writing ideas just like them. Patrons can get PDFs and guitar profiles of all of the riffs I'll mention in this video, as well as handy chord charts for all of the chords I'll show you in this video. Thanks for your support, and you can find a link for all of those at the top of the description. So first, you may be already aware that Dylan is well known for using alternate tunings, most notably the beautiful tuning of D, A, E, A, C sharp E. But it's how he constructs chords in these tunings using this string skip interval technique, as well as using open strings, that makes his technique unique. You can hear this approach to the way he plays chords in the upbeat strumming intro to the song Birdhouse. And in the chord stabs and rapid fire strumming in the main riff to the song Caution. But interestingly, it's not just alternate tunings he does this. Even in songs in drop D, we see Dylan apply this same wide interval open string concept. Take the intro to the song For the Sake of Brevity. He arpeggiates these wide interval chords and it gives this beautiful sound. Or the high energy strumming to the introduction to the song Day Drunk. And we even see instances where Dylan applies this kind of approach to the Noodly riffs that he writes, like the intro riff to Medicine. There's a tapping riff at the end of that, and he's applying the same concept there. But what are these chords exactly, and how do they work? Well, let me show you how you can build such chords and how you can use them to start writing your own tiny moving part style progressions. I'm in D, A, E, A, C sharp E tuning here, but this wide interval chords that I'm about to show you, I've made a chord chart that's going to go over this tuning as well as FACGCE tuning, and that's available to patrons, and you can find a link for that below in the description. So these wide interval chords, they work as 2-string skip intervals. For example, this chord here, this is going to be your E and your B. If you're familiar with your power chords, these are all, these fifth intervals, and we use them to play any of the chords in a particular key. And that's kind of what Dylan's doing here, from what I understand from my back engineering, is that he's using these kind of like these power chord intervals that sound beautiful when you add these open strings in between. So Dylan tends to play in the parent key of the song, and in this case, if we've not got any capo on, that's going to be A major. And here's these interval chords from the top string root here all the way through the key of A major. These chord names aren't technically right, but that's what the function is within the key. So your D major, E major sound, F sharp minor sound, then we're going to have the diminished, G sharp diminished, and then your tonic, the A, then a B minor, C sharp minor, and then back to this 4 chord. the D here. Right, so now you know some chords that you can use that are going to fit in the key, and these are the kind of chords that Dylan's using. What kind of progressions does he use? Well, I've done a lot of study of these 7 riffs, and what I've noticed is that they all focus around the 4 chord in whatever key they're in. So that's going to be that major 4 chord. And if you're familiar with your modal kind of progressions, that's going to give this like really bright Lydian sound. And I think that's what makes Dylan's sound, and this tuning in particular, sound so great. So for example, in Caution, we start on this. I know it's got a capo in a different key, so I'm just going to apply this to open here. We've got this 4 chord, and then we've got a bit of whittling, and that's followed by this going to the 6, and then the 5th, and then to the 1st. And there's a reason I'm showing you this. We're going to see as we go through these chord progressions that they're all very similar. So Birdhouse, again, it's in this tuning but half a step down, but it starts on the 4 chord again. And then we've got the widdly part. And then after that, we've got the 6 minor. And then we go down to the 5th. And then to the 4 again. In Medicine, different tuning, but again, from my analysis here, all the notes I've been writing over the last week, again here we've got this 4, 5, 6 progression loop in that intro riff. For the sake of brevity, this one's quite interesting. It starts on the 6, but we've still got that 6 minor chord, and that goes 6, 5, 1, 4. So again, we've got the same kind of chord types going on there. You lost me in FACGCE tuning. Nonetheless, I know there's no chords in this, but implied through the ringing note harmony in that intro riff, you've got a 4, 5, 6, 1. Day Drunk, again, I'm not in the right tuning for this drop D tuning, but again, here I can see this 4 to 1 progression. So slightly different, but still using the same chords. And lastly, Always Focused, another riff that's, not got chords in the introduction, but we've got this ringing harmony going on. So again, I've identified this as starting on that that open string there. Now this one I am kind of in the right tuning, right? So 4, 6, 5, back to the 4 again. All of this is just to say through those examples that Dylan is using those really popular chord progressions and popular chords, the 1, 4, 5 and the 6 chords. And I think that's why this sounds so pretty and nice. But the difference is that Dylan tends to focus around the open D sound here, which is more, you could either look at it as a slash chord, as the 1 chord, but when you start to put the notes in with it, it ends up more being like outlining that 4 chord. So it's kind of this like pseudo Lydian sound, we could say, and it sounds very bright and very nice. But another thing that Dylan does as well is to, while holding a chord, keeping the same lower note, but having this kind of moving melody in there. So that's another thing we want to do when we're playing these chords. And I've got an exercise that's going to help you find these notes later, but just by using your ears, you'll be able to tell which, chords, which notes sound nice. Bit of a stretch there, but if you hear, well, that note doesn't sound in the key right. Bit like that, So I start messing around with those higher notes. And the other thing that Dylan does, I've noticed in a few of these riffs, especially in Day Drunk, he'll mess with the, so let's say instead of going the higher note of this interval, you mess with the lower note instead, like that. And this kind of inspired me to write one of my own riffs. Like that. So now we're seeing how Dylan approaches chords and progressions. Let's move on to see how his choices with harmony help him craft those catchy noodly legato riffs he's really well known for. Another classic playing style of Dylan are those noodly legato style ideas containing lots of hammer-ons, pull-offs, slides and tapping. And during my back engineering of all of these riffs here, I noticed 2 common patterns in the way Dylan approaches writing these noodly ideas. The first approach is to sandwich short noodly phrases between chords, like you hear in Caution and Day Drunk. Or he might use a slightly longer phrase like we hear in the intro riff to the song Birdhouse, where we have an entire bar and that's intersected with this short noodly phrase here, and then followed by another 2 bars of chords there. The second approach does away with the chords and instead implies the harmony from a lower ringing note, which ideas are launched from. So you hear this in, You Lost Me. We've got these ringing lower notes as Dylan plays the chords. And always focused as well. So it's kind of this approach to playing melody and harmony at the same time. But how do you write such noodly riffs? Well, let me show you a simple step-by-step system I've made that will help you do that. But first, it's crucial to understand the following. To begin with, you'll need to be using the guitar techniques that Dylan uses. And I just mentioned a few of these. These techniques are those legato techniques like hammer-ons and pull-offs and slides, and techniques like string skipping and open string use, as well as tapping. I'm pretty sure you're familiar with most of these techniques, and if you've learned some of these tiny moving parts riffs already, or some others, you'll have a sense of how Dylan uses them. But now you're probably wondering, but Steve, I know the techniques, but how do I know what notes to use to write such ideas? Well, for all of the noodly TMP licks that I've looked at in these examples, no matter what the tuning is, my analysis shows me that they're all diatonic, meaning they only use notes from the key of that song. And while they're all slightly different from each other, they do have a lot in common. First, they are all uninterrupted, by which I mean there's no tricky pauses or rests in them. They're mostly these like straight 16th note rhythms, and some of them add this kind of quicker hammer on and pull off trills in triplets, 16th triplets, like in You Lost Me and Day Drunk. But apart from that, they're largely uninterrupted, which means we can aim to do the same when we write riffs. Second, they all contain instances of these short up and down scale quick runs and hammer on and pull offs usually from open strings. So in Day Drunk, we can see this in this bar here where Dylan plays like 4, 5, 7, 4, then 0. Then there's another chord stab, and he'll play the 0, 4, 5, 4, 0. So go up and down the scale again. In Birdhouse, we have this same kind of thing going on in that extra bar there as well with the lick. It starts on the open string, and you have that, but this time adding the tap, and then kind of a repeat here, but a slide instead. Up and down again there. In You Lost Me, if you separate this into 2 phrases, there's this quick hammer on there, and there's another up and down hammer on a pull off there as well. And in Always Focus, we've got the up and down. If weren't sliding, you're going to have that, that up and down hammer on pull off little trills there as well. So by putting this knowledge into action, I came up with a few exercises that will help you start noticing such patterns that you can use, and it works like this. So this exercise mimics some of the common ways that Dylan noodles in the explanations that I just gave. And as we know, Dylan's riffs and licks tend to be diatonic, so we only need to focus on the notes that are in the parent key of whatever song we're playing. I'm going to demonstrate in D, A, E, A, C sharp, E, but using the tool I'm about to show you, you can easily do the same for drop D and FACGCE tuning. So I've got Fretboard Navigator here, fantastic tool, so make sure you check the link in the description to get here. We're going to choose our tuning, so D, A, E, A, C sharp, E, and we're going to choose our key, and as we know, that's going to be, I don't have a capo on, so that's going to be A major as our parent key. And now we can see all of the notes that are diatonic in A major. And as we know, Dylan sticks to the parent key of the scale. So that's exactly what we're going to do for these exercises. So for the first exercise, you're going to hit the open string, and then we're going to hammer on to the next available note and then the one after. And this is going to mimic those fast hammer on runs that Dylan plays. So for example, you're going to play your D, and then you're going to go E, F. And you can see on the chart here, that's going to help you find those notes quickly. And you're going to repeat the same for the next string. And then the next string. Next one. And if you want, you can and pull off as well. And that's the way that we can start to get that feeling under our finger of those quick hammer-ons and start to build into our muscle memory where these notes are available on the fretboard. You'll start to find notes that go well with some of these open strings, which I'm jumping ahead, but we'll get back to that soon where we're going to apply the chords and the noodling together. So once you've done your first lot, you're going to move to the last note that you just played, and you're going to repeat the same process. Open again, and now hammer onto the next string. Like so. And you find like, that's quite tense, right? Because it's got the diminished sound. But you'll start to find some nice notes. And you're going to repeat the same process again. All the way, basically, those 2 note shapes with the open strings, the 3 notes in total. And you're going to do that all the way up to the 12th fret. And then you're just going to repeat again and go past there. So for the next exercise, I want you to repeat the same process. But this time we're going to mimic how Dylan does those fast hammer on and pull off licks. So as we saw, he likes to go up and then back down again and have the open string ringing. So we're going to repeat the same process. But this time you're going to come all the way back down. And with a metronome, this would be a bit tricky because you're doing 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, you're doing quintuplets. So groups of 5. But what you can also do as an alternative is the way that like Dylan plays some riffs is not open string first, but ends on the open string, right? So instead, fret the note and then go across the fretboard. And then repeat that same process all the way up to the 12th fret. Next, we're going to practice the type of tapping legato riffs that Dylan likes to write. And here's an exercise that will help you find the tapping real estate he often uses. So you'll notice looking at your fretboard navigator, there's these nice symmetrical parts of the fretboard where things line up quite nicely. And what I notice is that like in songs like in Always Focus, Dylan's using this space here for tapping. And even in Caution as well. It's the same part there. So for this exercise, we're going to start getting familiar with these kind of tapping riffs that Dylan often uses. So here we can go find that 7th fret, repeat that hammer on, but this time instead of using the open string, we're going to tap, pull off, then hammer on instead. And you find that Dylan doesn't really tap the lower notes here, so I still want you to practice nonetheless because you might develop something fun for you. But that leads us on to the last exercise, like how do you put the 2 together, right? We saw that Dylan's using these either ringing notes to imply a harmony or using the chords and then putting these like kind of fast noodles in between them. So that's what we're going to try and do for the last exercise here. So we know the kind of harmony that Dylan's using. He's using these 1s, 4s, 5s and 6 chords, and you can use those on the lower strings here or even from the 5th string root. And again, I've got a table of all of these chords, a chart, for this tuning and FACGCE, which you can get down below in the description. But if I was to take the most simple chord progression I can think of here and go 4, 5, 6, and I hit that 1, I'm going to use that as my harmony. And I could play, I could strum these chords, right? And I could try and put some, put some little noodles in between like that. But I do need to be cautious as I'm trying to do these noodles. I'm trying to think like, I'm trying to hit either that D sound or the A sound, because that's the tonic note. And if I was to take the other approach, let's say, and again, I'm writing this off the cuff in the moment, just to give you an example of how difficult this can be, but it really helps to learn what all these noodly patterns are, instead of beating yourself to death trying to learn where every single note is on the fretboard in a completely different tuning. So if we were to take the ringing up, we could do something like that, right? We'll take the descending note from caution, or that approach from You Lost Me. We can see So just to try and refine the idea, I like that tension, but I'll try and hit that tonic sound. I like going up like that, and then I got my minor chord. Let's steal all that from caution. And maybe I'll just strum on this last one. Or I could take a leaf out of You Lost Me and do something like that. And again, I would refine these ideas, you know, as I was trying to noodle around with them. But just, I found this exercise of just noodling around and finding where these notes are and where the different real estate is around a particular chord as I'm playing. You know, it really, really helps when crafting ideas. But there is a problem. When we do this kind of thing and stay diatonic all the time, it can get kind of samey sounding. And if that's what you're going for, that's completely fine, because that's how Dylan plays. But if you want to branch out into that unexplored territory of the notes that are in between and start getting some tension in your playing, then be sure to check out my video that I do the exact same process I just did for Tiny Moving Parts, but I'm doing it for Yvette Young of Cover instead. Thanks for watching. A big thanks to the patrons that are supporting and making this kind of content possible. All right, you guys are great. I'm rambling here. So anyway, see you in the next video. Goodbye.